Good evening. Before we sing, we're going to listen to some vocal works by Brahms. There's the man, one of the most famous portraits of the composer. The first set we'll listen to is his Lieder, opus 107, written roughly 1886 to 1888, which puts us in the final decade of the composer's life. This first piece, An die Stotze, translates roughly as follows. Nevertheless, I can do nothing else. I must be well disposed to her, even if her eye's proud light begrudges me their shine. I will, I should, I must love you. Therefore, we both will be unhappy, for my wish is in vain, and you do not wish to hear it.
Und gleichwohl kann ich anders nicht, ich muss ihr günstig sein. Obgleich der Augen stolzes Licht mir missgönnt seinen Schein. Ich will, ich soll, ich muss dich lieben. Dadurch wir bald uns nur betrüben, weil mein Wunsch doch nicht gilt und du nicht hören willst und du nicht hören willst.
Next, Salamander. A salamander was sitting on a cool stone when suddenly a bad girl threw it into the fire. How pleasant. Wonderful piece. Great text painting in that piece. Next, Das Mädchen spricht. Tell me, swallow, is it last year's mate you've built your nest with, or are you but recently betrothed? Such a brilliant ending to that piece. After all of this flowing, sort of flying type of figures in the piano part, boom, boom. Just fantastic. Next, Mayan Kätzchen. Of course, I can't pronounce that. May Catkins, first greeting, I pick you and pin you on my old hat. May Catkins, first greeting, once I picked and pinned you on my sweetheart's hat. And if you're wondering what a catkin is like a flower on a tree that sort of hangs. It's a very light flower. Probably blows a lot in the breeze. Again, beautiful text painting in that piece. I imagine these catkin flowers sort of hanging from the tree. Bum, ba-dum, bum, ba-dum. Just wonderful. Next, the Mädchenlied. Translated roughly, at night in the spinning room, the girls are singing. The village lads are laughing. How swiftly the wheels go round. The text painting in this one is also just superb. The way, the wheels are going round and round, and you can see here the line goes up and then down and up and then down, and same with the accompaniment, very much in tandem there. Just superb. This is one of the reasons I love Brahms, these little almost hidden details in the music that illuminate the text just perfectly. Okay, next, onto something completely different. These drei Duette, these 3 duets. And Brahms is known for writing for somewhat unusual combinations at the time, and he wrote many pieces for sopranos and altos and tenors and basses, and this is the era when the large SATB choir was the fad. We're singing some of those pieces now. We've sung works by Bruckner and Dvorak, and he really goes against the trend and writes these very small, intimate pieces for duet that's just wonderful. This first one translates roughly as follows. Over the mountains and over the waves, under the fountains and under the graves, under floods that are deepest, which Neptune obey, over rocks that are steepest, love will find out the way. Just wonderful. Next, number 2, Weg der Liebe. The Gordian knot which love has tied, can it be broken? Can it be untied by mortal hands? What are you striving for? What are you devising with your cunning purposes? Through what you are setting about, love will find the way. Finally, we end with Die Meere. The winds are all sleeping on the mirror of the water. Cool shadows of evening cover the weary. Luna draws a veil across her face, hovering in twilight dreams over the water. Okay, well, let's sing. And as usual, the person who makes it all possible is our fine accompanist, Mun-Tzung Wong. Let's all say hi to Mun-Tzung. She's coming to us from New York, as I am too. Let's turn to the Schicksalslied, and we start at the letter B for Brahms, the slow section. And just a note to remind us about the way these rehearsals will be run from now on in these final couple of months. The first rehearsal of the month, the first Tuesday, which is tonight, will be on YouTube. We'll do a little social hour afterwards. And then every subsequent week after that will be on Zoom. So you'll get one YouTube and then 3 or 4 or 5 Zooms, depending on how many weeks fall in the month. And I think that that will be a nice sort of compromise between the passive listening of YouTube and the more active listening and participation of Zoom. Don't forget to download the rehearsal schedule because it has changed. We've modified it slightly to reflect sort of our abilities to rehearse the number of movements in a rehearsal. So I've altered it to be just 1 movement per piece per rehearsal. So just check that out. There's a link in the description below. Okay, here's the Schicksalslied starting at letter B. Here we go. 3, 4. Tutti. 3. Glänzen. Tenor. Big sound here. Heil. Soft. Schicksalos. Lots of air here, but soft. And tenor. Okay, so let's stop there and go back a little bit, talk about some parts that we haven't talked about as much, and that is where the choir comes in bar 34. Talked about this a little bit, but make sure that we sing this very soft, sempre dolce. It's the first presentation of the chorus, and it's easy to sing it mezzo piano, but resist that and sing it just soft, very sweet, but with lots of air. So for the soprano, the tenor, and the bass, I put in, as I put in other parts of the score, breathe, so that we know. We remind ourselves to breathe so that we've prepared the air. Now on the next page, in bar 35, on the word droben, make sure this is a nice bright aw for droben, not ben, not like me, but droben with a schwa at the end. Droben, im, not im, but im, and then licht. And make sure that it's not licht, but Licht, closer to Bach, not quite so far back, but somewhere in between. Aufweichen, and again with a schwa at the end, and a nice bright ah on weichem, same for bolden. And this for this bolden right here, yes, technically I think bolden, but open it up, brighten it up a little bit for bolden so that it stays in tune. Selige, nice bright A, like the accent aigu in French, the Italian A, selige, schwa at the end, G with a hard G, and then genien with the schwa at the end. Oops. I always have trouble with the schwa. I have to upside down E. Okay, now we've talked about letter C, but remind ourselves, as the composer does at letter C, that it's molto piano. Here, composer, how can you be the most soft? Well, I think what he's saying is that after this little orchestral interlude, he wants to be sure that the mood stays the same, so that it stays just very soft. There's no sense of pushing ahead, no sense of rising and falling. This is not that kind of a movement. Just keep it all very smooth and soft. Glänzen die Götter Lüfte. Yeah, we talked about this text already. Just to remind ourselves, some of you have asked at the last Zoom rehearsal, how much do we crescendo? And I put just plus. Yeah, ruhen. Yeah, ruhen is like very sort of restful. Again here, a second time, so nice we do it twice. Just little nuances here in the dynamics. The same thing at the bottom of the page in the final two bars. Glänzen de Götter. Yeah, and sopranos probably have to modify this a little bit on Götter Lüfte. So put a lot more E in the sound, not so much Götter, Götter, Götter. I think that'll help us reach the upper notes. To sing here on the next page, before letter D, as in daybreak, on the word leicht, make sure we go all the way to beat 3 here. Leicht, and we have kind of a diphthong, and save the diphthong until the very end. Leicht, and then a very soft, not t, but leicht, and that should be a nice ending to that phrase. A little bit more about the text, then we'll sing it again at letter D. Dvorak, V, D, we talked about that before, and then Finger, and this is a softer G here, not Finger, but Finger, der, Kunst, Rin, and sopranos here, I would circle your note, just because the way the score is laid out with these compressed systems, which is not ideal. Just circle your notes so you know where you come in, also to breathe, Heilige, so you have enough air to go forward. Everybody, all of these, again, hairpin dynamics are just plus, just a little nuance. Here's why he writes molto piano, by the way. Here's our forte. All right, this is the first forte. You can mark it in with some sort of a marking to let you know. Okay, let's go back to letter B again, as in Brahms, and put that into action. Letter B, 3 and 4. Breathe here, but soft. And. Schwa. And off on B3. And then lots of air here, glänzen, but soft. Gitarrlüfte. Tenor Glenn. Lüfte, Rühen, Rühen. Sopranos breathe, high. Seiten. Little crescendo here. Okay, so one thing I forgot to mention before, let's stop there, and that is at the bottom of the page, I had mentioned at the very bottom of the page in bar 60 or so, that's our arrival at forte, but there's this long crescendo leading up to that point, right? And in my score, it looks like some sort of expressionist painting, I know, with all of these different markings in here. You can do what you have to do to make your score look clean and presentable, but I put the crescendo here, bar 57, bar 58, and bar 59, so that we know to get louder. We can only get louder, though, if we start soft. So in this bar, bar 56, after Seiten, diminuendo, Anton, it's a schwa sound anyway, sort of a darker sound. That sound disappears on beat 3, Seiten, and then we start soft, and then slowly crescendo, little by little by little by little, and that'll be a great effect there, and it's what the composer wants anyway. Okay, can we start at letter D, as in Dvorak? Letter D. 3 and 4. Soft, and we crescendo poco a poco a poco. Highly good. Crescendo here. Schicksalos and Koish, soft and okay, so let's talk about this moment here. One of the very few a cappella moments in these works by Brahms. He really chooses between accompaniment or a cappella in his pieces, but he has a little bit of both in this. And so we'll talk about that. So letter E for Elgar, Koish, Bevat. We've spoken about this text before. In bescheidene. Make sure that this is in bescheidene. Knospe with a capital K and an audible K. Knospe. Then in the next bar, it's important, I don't know if we have a page turn or not, but if you're reading from the paper score, if you do have the page turn, I like to put in a note that says, breathe. You don't always know what's coming, and then you could even put breathe, and then a cappella, which for some of us is our favorite, and for some of us is our least favorite. I happen to like it, because I like to live on the edge, but I know that it's not for everybody, and that's perfectly fine. In bar 79, make sure we have enough air to sing it. Okay, and if we're at all uncomfortable with singing a cappella, then instead of having this be piano, let's make this actually mezzo piano in bar 79, because we want to be confident. in singing a cappella, right? The rug has been pulled out from under us. There's no support in the accompaniment. So make sure we have the air and the presence of the tone to go on. Bliebet ewig, ewig ihnen der Geist. And only a slight diminuendo at the end here so that we can stay confident in this sound. And that's where we hand it off to the orchestra. But still very disciplined in putting the ST on 3. Okay, can we go before letter E now? Elgar, 2 bars. 2 before letter E. 3 and 4. Keusch. We breathe here, a cappella, blue. And a soft T. Tenor. And here's our diminuendo. Klarheit. Klar. Again, lots of air here for blicken. Okay, quick word about this and then we'll move on to the Requiem. But where we have blicken here, blicken, these can be the uppercase I, blicken sound, because it's a very low note, so no reason to put any pressure on the voice. And besides, Brahms has sort of an echo effect here. Blicken in Stille, a very calm, sort of meditative moment. So we want to make sure that it's plenty soft. Stagger your breathing in these bars here, these final 2 bars. Those are bars 92 and 93. All right, but sopranos, in this previous bar here, take a little lift. Blicken in Stille, so that we have enough air to go on. And you notice soprano, your text is on top. Have to do a lot of score reading, to find your text in this piece. Okay, let's move on to the Requiem now. Good work on that. I'm sure you're all doing well, even though I can't hear you. And for this one, we're in the 3rd movement of the Requiem. One second here, just want to check my sound and make sure it's okay, because I've had issues with the sound. I want to make sure you're getting the very best. Great. Okay, so we start with the 3rd movement, right from the top, in 2. And everybody sing along with the solo. 1 and 2. Tenor bass, Herr, Lira, Okay, so a couple words about this and then we'll try it again. But go back to bar 48, everybody. So we've had the solo, we've all sung und ich davon muss, that's no problem. But after we hear the soloist singing these very dramatic lines, even though it's soft, we want to make sure that we don't sing bar 48 too loud. So I like to remind myself piano, but even on the page before that, remind myself to sing. Yep, oops, there it is. And then sing soft. Just so we know what we're getting into here. Siege meine. In terms of breathing here, just take a little lift at the comma. Yeah. And soprano, we've talked about articulating the 16th notes every time that we have them. Meine Tage, Tage. It sounds good, and actually it makes it, I think, a little bit easier to sing. Now, it's going to be tempting, because I can predict the future, from bars 48, 49, and 50, it's going to be tempting to crescendo too much too soon, but keep it all soft. Yeah, notice in the next bars, that's where the composer marks the crescendo. Siege meine Tage. And even here, it's just a slight crescendo. Why? Because in bar 53, as we put here in our markings, we have something on the downbeat, but we continue on. So let's just put mezzo forte here. That is an MF, I promise. Mezzo forte, and then up to the forte. So save it for those moments. Can we go from bar, Niemczyk bar 41, bottom of the previous page? Und. Well, so here's bar 41, everybody. 1 and 2. Now very soft here, Zie. Now little crescendo, poco a poco. Not too much. Here's our forte. And soft. We articulate the 16th note sopranos. And again our forte. For dir. We start soft here, und. Big crescendo. Right, and just a word about this here too. I mentioned this previously in rehearsals, but in bar 93, make sure that we stay soft, put it into your individual part, because that's where we sort of crisscross with the orchestra. They have their subito double forte, but we end quite the opposite of that. Now, a word about bar 85 and 86. This is our exception to the rule. There's always an exception to a rule, right? We have these short phrases with the hairpin dynamics that normally I would say just nuanced crescendo diminuendo, but here the composer says, nope, all the way up to forte. Ich davon muss, and we achieve that by making sure that this is a nice bright I on ich, and then da, especially for the soprano, make sure that we set ourselves up for success. Ich davon muss, and a nice bright almost an really, on von muss. E natural, is not that high of a note for soprano, but you're coming from the low notes. So you want to make sure that you keep it light and bright. Ich davon muss, and then we pucker on muss. Yep. Okay, can we try that from, see the previous page, bar 77? und ich davon muss. Okay, here's bar 77. 1 and 2. Soft. Big crescendo here. And then soft, davon. Okay, so let's skip ahead now. Skip ahead. Let's go all the way to letter E, as in everything. And let's go 2 before letter E. 2 before E. 2 and 3. Letter E and. Okay, great. Then we have another instrumental part here. At letter E, I think I marked this in before, but just to remind ourselves, on the word ach, nice and bright on ach. Ach, wie, and don't forget to put the CH. It's easy to cheat that and go ach, wie, ach, wie, gar nicht. And the CH of ach, sort of in the back here, middle to the back. Ach, wie, gar nicht. And make sure that gar is not gar, not like garland, but gar nicht, and then off on beat 3. I reminded us also before to stay strong here. For some reason, we tend to get a little soft on sind, but stay strong on sind alle Menschen. Here, however, in bar 133, we do want to sing this a little bit softer, because there has to be somewhere to go. And honestly, I don't know why the composer has us singing the same dynamic there. Who knows? You know what happens? It could have been a printing issue, but traditionally, choirs take this a little bit softer, and we should too, just to give ourselves somewhere to go. Die doch so sicher. Yeah? And soprano, on so sicher, make sure this is nice and bright. Sicher. Probably have to modify here a little bit. Sicherlich. And definitely le in the final bar of the page. Okay, can we go again from 2 before letter E, 2 before Elgar. 2 and 3. Ach. Stay strong on sind. Little softer. Crescendo. Ready, bass. Okay, we can stop there. I always find this a marvelous moment here at bar 159, where you have these diminished sonorities just holding on further and further and further and further. It's a really wonderful moment there. Most composers would resolve the chord and have a point of rest, but Brahms, in his, as I've said before, in his really dramatic way, dramatic sense, much like Handel and Bach too, is able to just drag out the drama. Was soll ich mich trösten? And then we get the resolution in the next bars. It's quite brilliant. I always love that moment when I sing it. Previous to that, let's go back a couple of pages to letter F. At letter F, basically I mentioned this, that it's marked mezzo forte here, but we want to make this mezzo piano. I don't think I was clear about that before. And every subsequent entrance also very, very soft. This is a kind of a heroic moment. Nun, Herr, was soll ich mich tun? And it's easy to kind of shout it out, but don't shout this one out. Okay, make sure it starts soft, and then we crescendo. It says molto crescendo, but that's subjective. You know, how much crescendo? Not too much too soon. You still want to build the drama here. So give it at least a couple of bars to develop and materialize. Okay, and then at letter F for soprano and alto, I think we talked about last semester that we have these half notes that are kind of bell-like. Nun, Herr. Yeah, so just put little tenutos on those half notes and then contrast it in bar 145, C soprano, with the articulation of the eighth notes. Yeah, so we have these more sustained Nun, Herr, was soll ich mich? Yeah. Do you hear the difference in the separation? Nun, Herr, was soll, bum, 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 bum. That's a little bit more march-like there. Okay, let's go before letter F, 2 bars. All right, 2 bars before letter F. 2 and 3. Soft here. Orchestra first, then bass, soprano, to the fun part. I don't mean to be a party killer here, but it's important that in these bars leading up to the great fugue and the most interesting timpani part ever written is in bar 167, 68, 69, that we really hear the difference between the triples and the duples. Yeah? This is characteristic of Brahms. We've heard it in the songs. We hear it in almost every piece, really, that he wrote, at least the known and famous pieces. We have this idea of bum 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 bum. Yeah, always that dichotomy of 2 versus 3. It's also very Renaissance-like. You see that a lot in the treatment of the hemiola as well in composers like Bach and Handel. So make sure when we have the triples that they're articulated, like alto in bar 167, ha 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 dich. Yeah, and that we hear the differences there as contrasted with the soprano in bar 167, dich auf dich. Yeah, it's the triple versus duple. Yeah, and that's throughout this whole section. And to make it further complicated, we have to sing it moderately. Okay, this is not forte here. This is crescendo, bar by bar by bar. So you have two things happening, the crescendo, the raising in the volume, and then the complexity of the rhythm. Yeah, bum, 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 gets louder, 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 louder than the arrival at 169. Yep. So pay attention to all those things, and I think we'll get the best experience out of this possible. Let's try it from the double bar at bar 164. All right, bar 164 on the previous page, and let's start from the G sharp in the bass. And bass, soprano, alto, bass, bass, and we have that somewhat of a, almost like a plagal cadence at the end there, almost like the end of a hymn. Amen. Just a glorious ending. Well, that's it, everybody. Time flies when you're having fun. I know, time flies quickly. As usual, let's thank our fine accompanist, Mun-Tzung Wong, for her great work. Thank you, Mun-Tzung. And just a couple of notes, we'll have the social hour after this. So use that second link that I sent to you to log on to Zoom, and we can talk about whatever you want to talk about. Bring food, drink, whatever. It's a time for us to interact and to unmute, which I know is what everybody wants to do. I do as well. We can unmute and chit-chat about life, about the future. I know that WAS is currently applying for some grants for future projects, and that's something that's in the works, but I want everybody to know that the board is committed to continuing the ensemble, and we have big dreams. We're not thinking, maybe if we come back. We're counting on when we come back, we want to do this and this and this and this. So I can't say exactly what the grants are because we haven't received them yet, but there's a good chance that we will get them some sort of assistance and that WASP will come back to its glorious self. So another note, and that is that next week, March the 9th, we will be having an annual meeting. So be sure to log in for that meeting on March 9th, right at 7 o'clock, so that we can present to you kind of the state of the union, the state of the group. We'll get a little financial report. It's something that we used to do in person in Katona, and now obviously we do it online. So just make note of that, and you'll receive a reminder of that. Okay, so we'll see you in a few minutes, everybody. If we don't see you at the social hour, have a good week.